Don't you rise, shine, for your light is come.
Hello, I'm Rosemary Barnes. That was our church you just saw, River of Life Ministries. My husband Robert and I founded that church in January of 1980. And we are the co-pastors to this day, and we have many other ministers as well now with us leading the work of this ministry at our church. You are welcome to visit anytime. You're welcome to join. If you come a few times and hear God say, this is where you belong, that will make us very happy because we love to welcome new people into our local church family. Today, and then the program a week from now, I want to emphasize the topic, Home Ministry Fellowship. That is the name of the group that River of Life is a part of. And I want to tell you how that happened. And I want you to understand some things about starting and doing church. I particularly want to gear this towards people that are having meetings in your home, or people who know someone who is, but they've never had the courage to take the leap of faith and say, you know what, this is most of our church right here. Why don't we go a step further and call it what it's been for a long time now? And if the Lord should give me favor with you through this message, you can get in contact with me. Hopefully they'll put the website and the email. The email is rbarnes, R-O-L, at AOL.com. It would be good to put that in on the screen. rbarnes, R-O-L, at AOL.com. There it is. And if you write me and say, I listened to your message on Home Ministry Fellowship, please tell me more about it. This message will eventually be under the title Home Ministry Fellowship on YouTube, at which time you can send the link to perhaps a relative you know that this might be applicable to, the things that I'm proposing. You'll know what I'm talking about as you listen this week, and hopefully to part 2 as well. When we started our church, it was because I kept hearing God emphasize Ephesians 4. Now, mind you, this started in my heart in 1978. At that time, I didn't hear anybody else emphasize Ephesians 4 as a primary model of doing church. I didn't hear anybody talk about that. Since we started our church, I've heard many people talk about Ephesians 4, but not while I was here in my spirit. As a matter of fact, when God eventually gave me the name for River of Life, I hadn't heard of any other River of Lives. Now they're all over the place, all over the country, that name. Although we're not connected organizationally, I'm sure that it's a neat thing to think of the fact God gave us the same name. It'd be fun to meet all the River of Lives one day and see how it came about for them. But when we were looking for a church that was doing Ephesians 4, and we did look, and you could say, what were we looking for? Well, first I'll complete my sentence. When we were looking for that, we didn't find anybody who had that vision at that time. Nobody. We went to a couple of house situations that we were hoping would evolve into that vision, but it became clear pretty fast, no, the person that was leading it pretty much seemed to have the same model of doing meetings as everyone else we had seen. Well, what had we seen as a model? Well, where I was raised at First Byron Center Christian Reformed Church, the model of doing church for everybody I knew was you get a pastor. Our pastor literally, except for special events, would lead the song service. He'd preach the sermon. He'd do the long prayer. He'd pretty much do a lot of the hospital and home visitation, although the elders and deacons did as well. But that pastor would show up at our house too when somebody was sick at the house. In fact, I think more often than not, it would be the pastor. In other words, the pastor was pretty much doing everything at church that was up front in the sanctuary. Now, admittedly, there were breakaway things like Sunday school, and in our case, Calvinettes and cadets, kind of like the Christian answer to Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. There would be people in the congregation doing these kinds of things, or the women doing a sewing circle and helping people out when they were in need. There were a lot of groups, but the main focus was on the pastor, and the word would be decidedly his ministry. At that time in our church, women were not allowed as pastors. In fact, I remember when the first woman graduated from Calvin Seminary. That would be Marcine Vroon Rienstra, and there was no Christian Reformed church that would take her at that time because it wasn't allowed, even though she had graduated now from seminary. But now things have entirely changed. But I'm just trying to point out to you that the old school of thought was usually that the pastor was the main person to do the work in the church. Well, when I started to see the truths of Ephesians 4, I saw that there's not only pastors involved in church, there's apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers. Now, sometimes a person is all five of those things. I can think of several ministers right off the top of my head. David Wilkerson, Lester Summerall, Gwen Shaw. I don't know if she was a pastor of a church, but other than that, she pretty much fulfilled the other four. Well, I saw that there was more than the pastor that could come forth, and I also saw that the job of these people, which we now, and most people in our circles, charismatic, Pentecostal, full gospel circles, call them fivefold ministry offices. But I saw in Ephesians that those people were given as gifts to the body of Christ, not only to role model what their special function was, like evangelism or teaching, but also to perfect the saints for the work of the ministry. The goal being that every joint, Ephesians 4 mentions, should supply to the whole, with the goal of us all growing up into the full stature of Christ. That's the goal. Right there. And the ministry is there to encourage the people to come forth in whatever they were created to be. And also we as pastors and teachers and part of the fivefold ministry, whatever part that might be, we're supposed to have eyes to see who it is that is showing what their destiny in Christ is supposed to be in the church, and encourage them to do this. Now, we don't train just those to turn around and do fivefold ministry, although I have a school for that in our church. But also when somebody is a deacon, we can see that. If they do the work of the deacon, we'll eventually call them that, and they're known among us as deacons. If we see somebody's called to be a praise team leader, they're not necessarily also called to be a fivefold minister, but we will recognize that, encourage them. We have in our church what's called open pulpit time. A lot of time you can tell who's called to be a teacher or even a pastor from what they show forth during that time, or a singer, or somebody you need to encourage in their special gift. Some people are good poets or actors or drama makers and doers, and just to encourage people. There's so many gifts. There's a gift of helps. There are people gifted in hospitality. There's a whole list of things in the Word that people are gifted to do. Giving. People are gifted in giving. And it's our job as fivefold ministers, listed in Ephesians 4, to see what's in people. And not to even limit you're a good giver and helps person. Not to box them into that. They might evolve into a teacher one day, or a singer. Somebody might surprise us with praise leading ability we didn't know they had for years, for several years. And one day they decide in open pulpit to sing a song, and we all follow, and we go, why isn't this person leading praise from time to time? That could happen. I'm saying that Ephesians 4 showed me all by myself, really. I didn't hear anybody else talk about this. I'm not saying nobody was. I'm saying I didn't hear it. And later on it says in Ephesians 4, speaking the truth in love that we might grow up into Christ. Now, I love my cultural background that I, in fact, was adopted into. As the older I get, the more I love the Dutch people and their cleanliness and integrity and their work ethic. And that's, you might think I'm prejudiced. No, I lived with them. I know how they are and still are. When you see Dutch people in action, you still see a lot of these things, frugality and generosity and warmth of heart, in spite of a reticence to show a lot of drama and emotion. The warmth and loyalty is there, and as I speak of it, I just want to weep out of finally recognizing the wealth in the heritage that I was brought into through adoption. I love that about them, but they are, along with that reticence, you know, my backdrop here, a verse is speaking the truth in love that we might grow up, is of the reticence of showing emotion. There also exists a hesitancy to call out the elephant that's in the room when there's one in there, to speak of things that need to be talked about, that if somebody's just out of whack, you know, who gets to be the person to point it out to them? In my background, that wasn't a real nobody was vying for the right to be the one that pointed out a problem and now we're going to talk about it openly. Nobody was competing for that role, let me tell you. And so I saw the results of that and I didn't like it. I like straightforward, speak the truth in love, be it challenging or comforting, whatever it is, and I felt that we needed to take that phrase in Ephesians 4 literally. Even to the point that when you do see a gift in somebody, you say it, but by the same token, if somebody thinks they have a calling, they either aren't beginning to manifest one tinge of yet, or you're beginning to think it's a little late for that, whatever, or they're totally tone deaf, and maybe they shouldn't be leading worship. Somebody has to say, too, you know, we need to pray for a miracle if this is what you feel called to do. Let's all pray together, but meanwhile, you're not going to walk in that. Well, I say all that to say, when I was seeing these things, and I shared them with Robert, and he was totally tracking with me as I pointed them out. In the process, God said to me, what's that in your hand, Moses? And I realized he was saying to Robert and me and his wife, and he also, having been a preacher since he was 16, as well as a worship leader, that together we should start a church. And bless his heart, as soon as I said to him, I think God's saying to us, stop looking around to see if anybody sees this. You two start what you see. What's that in your hand, Moses? I gave you the vision. Not everybody else right this second around you. I gave it to you. So, lo and behold, we opened up a church in our living room. First, we went to our pastor, Pastor Benson. We told him exactly what I just told you so far. And we said, we're starting a church. And he said, is there anything I can offer you to change your mind? Because at that time, we were the ministers of the college and career class. And everybody was getting along just fine, and they had somebody in place, and as a pastor, I know that's valuable. So I can see his point of saying, is there anything here that I can do to cause you to want to flesh out more of your vision right here? And I quickly said, no, I think God's called us. And then he said, you turkeys. And then he said, God bless you. If we can help in any way, we're here for you. And one nice thing he did later, if you were to read the First Assembly of God over there on 44th Street in Wyoming, their 50th anniversary booklet, he puts our picture and the fact that we came out of First Assembly to start River of Life Ministries. And I so appreciated that, because naturally when you do something that bold, there's some of the saints that are going to think you're doing it in rebellion. They're not aware of the fact we talked to our pastor. He gave us his blessing. and thought enough of us to put that in the book. That was a great relief to us because it stopped all the mouths. Well, why would the mouths talk? Well, because people just don't go around every day up and starting a church in their living room. It just isn't done that often. And people think you must be out there all on your own and just doing something because you don't want to submit to anybody else. And at that time, we'd just come out of, or we're a little bit still into, a movement called shepherdship, that the most common thing to say to somebody if they even had a church going would be, who are you under? That was a common thing to say. Who are you under? Well, thank God, a man that I'd never thought he would help us in starting our new church, named Pastor Stillwell. Well, his mama didn't name him that. She named him Charles Stillwell. He was a man and his wife together ran a group they started in 1966 called Home Ministry Fellowship. There was a really traumatic time in my life that I had ran from Michigan to California, and I was looking for a church to be a part of, and don't ask me how, but I ended up in the living room of Charles and Bobby Stillwell in Spring Valley, California, a suburb of San Diego, and they had church in their home. First time I ever bumped into anybody who had services in their living room. And he had no intention of buying a building. He literally saw a blessing in having house church. They had a huge living room. They had room for, I don't know if there were 20, 30 people when I was there. They would have had a room for 50, 60, if that many came, and we all snuggled some. They had room for that. But I'll tell you what, that group, that church, was just what I needed at that time. And he had been a Methodist pastor, and he had a vision for Home Ministry Fellowship. And that's why he started that. It's a 501c in California. And it still is. And I'm the president now. Bobby and Charles are in heaven with Jesus. I'm the president for life. I was voted in from his son, who was the president at the time of their deaths, and the 13 to 15 people that were on the board at that time. They voted me in, and then Robert in. And so we are the president, vice president. We have some people from our church also on that legal board. Well, he called and said God spoke to my heart. We had just told him. I kept in contact with him because I love those people so much. They had helped me so much, just in a comforting way and a teaching way in California. But he called and he said, I felt God tell me to let you be a subsidiary of Home Ministry Fellowship. Well, the 501c allows for any kind of church, be it in a storefront or a library, community room, or a wherever, house, barn, it doesn't matter where we meet. They had the corporation and they were able to do that. And then he said, and we'll ordain you as well. He knew our background, both of our background, and all our work before that. He knew I had graduated from Calvin College and had went through all Christian schools, had Bible training all my life. And Robert in the Pentecostal church was very faithful and active, been a board member in his church, and just a steady worshiper, preacher of God from a different stream that had different requirements to come forth in ministry. Still did when I met him at Bethel Pentecostal in 1975-ish, and then again in 76 on a more permanent basis. But one reason I'm doing these programs is because we now have the wherewithal. That's why I said in the beginning, and I said you'd understand later, to find out about a person or a couple that feels called to start a church. And we have the wherewithal to ordain and to make that church have an instant 501c covering, which would be us. Just like Pastor Stillwell, he kept in contact. We wrote quarterly finance and ministry reports and tucked in a small offering every time we did that. He did not control us. He made sure we believed in the basics, like, say, the Apostles' Creed, and he knew we were both Spirit-filled. It is a Spirit-filled group. Pentecostal, I guess you could call it, or full gospel. We are that, but there's not control involved. Now, having said that, nor are we cheap, and by that I mean you can't just think to yourself, oh, I'd love to have a 501c or run a church out of my house and hit it a lick or two. No, the corporation bylaws in California even say it has to be a weekly meeting, and you truly have to have meetings that call themselves a church. And you have to be somebody that is genuinely immersed in the Word of God and have been for a long time. There's nothing cheap about us. In our own church, we require that people go through the leadership school, the Word Ministry School, which involves 4 years of just going through the whole Bible, if not more, if people choose to do it part-time. I'm also available, and it wouldn't be the first time that I've taught students other than members of the church, and we could work out something through the internet. I'm just saying to you, and that's why I wanted her to put the email on the screen of what is available. When it gets on YouTube, if you know somebody in California where the headquarters are, I just came back, that would like to do this sort of thing, and you know they're trained, they're worthy, but they have a vision. And I don't want somebody shacking or somebody that believes it's all right, that abortion or gay marriage is all right. We're very old school, stick to the word, old fashioned. I was staying with someone whose daughter is quite liberal, and she said, I'm the liberal black sheep that everybody talks about. And I said, I am the conservative, Bible-thumping, believing, right-wing person that, we were both smiling at each other. There's a deep love between us, even though she's very liberal and I'm extremely conservative. There's deep love. But when it comes down to you're starting a church and want to be a part of us and be covered by our 501c corporation, I don't play with that. I don't compromise what I see in the Word. So we're going to have to talk some. But it is an opportunity not only to have a 501c cover, as Pastor Stillwell granted us, and it's been a great gift, because then people could give to us and claim, we could be nonprofit and they could claim their tax breaks. Now, there might be a time that this doesn't matter, because that's taken away. That could well happen, but as long as it matters, it's worthwhile. I'll tell you something else. I will no longer be nonprofit the day the government informs me that I have to do this, this, and this that goes against my conscience in order to keep that. I'm going to tell you that right now. But the other benefit is that you do have somebody that, me, my husband, River of Life is a prayer cover, the Mother Church now. We operate Home Ministry Fellowship out of our headquarters, even though we do have a resident agent in California. We're still a legal corporation there, but we operate out of our headquarters, and we would care about you and network about you. I actually would love it if I could have a map of the United States, and there's dots from Maine to San Diego and Seattle to Miami, dots on the map of these are people we can say to you are Bible-believing, devout ministers of the gospel. And if we were to come together somewhere in the middle of the nation and have gatherings, we have before several times, since I was president too, in Arizona. What happened to the mother group that gave to us, now we're that group, but that gave to us when we needed it, the pastor was still traveling, visiting all the groups when he was in his 90s. But the whole group got older and of retirement age. We still have, I would guess 7, 8, 9, I'm not sure, because some of the ministers don't stay in touch. Several do, but some of them don't, that are ordained by us. I would like to bring us together more, even with a maybe quarterly newsletter saying, if you're ever in, we do have a lady in Kansas City who's ordained by us. If you're ever in Kansas City, so-and-so who's our part of our group is there. Or if you're ever in Anaheim Hills, so-and-so's there. If you're ever in Sierra Vista, so-and-so have a Sunday night home group, and they're ordained with us. I would like to be able to once more do that. Things obviously are going to change when a whole group of people started together in 1966, when they're already in their 40s, and then, you know, play out over the years. And now I am just now reaching out again way more. That's what the trip to California was about. The few people that I know there that I know are interested in ministry, or in one case a member of a big ministry I thought might know some other people interested. A couple of women that already have ministries that might be interested in starting weekly groups that could easily be called church for somebody. You know, there's a lot of people out there right now who are believers but don't want to go to anybody's church with even 100 people in a room because they just are burned out on the idea of organized church. Now, our church, I've always said, is like a house church in a building. We have a formal building, but we have tried diligently to maintain the home ministry atmosphere in our church. I think if you'd visit us, you'd see this. But there's nothing, matter of fact, I was going to share the verses, I guess I will in the next program. There's nothing unbiblical about having a church in your home and staying right there. Now, there might be something in your city, which was the case with us in our first 4 years we were in our church, but we found out later the city told us we weren't supposed to because the houses next door were too close. If they were a certain distance, that would have been fine, but they were too close. Therefore, the city told us meet somewhere else. So that's what we did. But maybe in your case, it's just fine to do it in your church. I know a church, Maranatha, started in a chicken coop, and it was little. Some of the best meetings I ever went to were in that chicken coop. It doesn't matter where you have church, just so we do it from a New Testament base and principles. So I hope you write me and ask me more about this. In the next program, I will tell you more about the possibilities of someone starting a church and being underneath a home ministry fellowship as a 501c covering for your ministry. Pray about it. Ask the Lord to show you somebody who might be able to use it. God bless you for listening.